Welcome to Bake to the Future. The wholesale baking industry mixes tradition and innovation to feed the world and the economy, generating some major dough while employing nearly 800,000 people in the U.S. We bring you a fresh take on the latest trends and issues impacting the baking sector through exclusive insights and conversations. Brought to you by the American Bakers Association, who will take you bake to the future.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Haley Blumenreich.
And I'm Katie Jewell.
Today we're bringing you a special episode about the coronavirus, and our guest today is ABA CEO and President Robb MacKie. Thanks for joining us, Robb.
Thank you, Haley. Thank you, Katie.
Robb, where are you joining us from today?
Well, I'm actually my son is home from college. He has taken over the basement for his online classes. So I have taken over his old bedroom. So I've got stuffed animals and sports paraphernalia all around me.
And then Haley and I are joining from our her closet at her parents' house, and I am in my closet at my house. So everybody's doing what they can to help bring this information to our members. And I know, Robb, you and I spend a lot of time talking about what's going on. What sort of light could you shed on the different things that you've been working on or that ABA has been working on, just so folks who might not see our emails really get an understanding of how all of the work, what do we actually do to make all of these things happen?
Sure, Katie. I mean, that's a great question. What we did, and let me just step back a little bit and provide some context. So really about 3 weeks ago, we were all paying attention to the news about coronavirus, particularly when it was over in China and then Italy. And we were doing a little bit of preparation in case it should become a big issue here in the U.S. I don't think anybody really anticipated how fast and how large the challenge would become. One of the things that immediately came to mind, borrowing off of similar situations in a sense of, a natural disaster, a hurricane, or a snowstorm or some other natural disaster, is we have got to keep the food supply operational. So we immediately spun up with our members and the team has just done a fabulous job. Would love to talk about that a little bit more. We immediately contacted our folks in government at the Homeland Security, the FDA, the CDC, and others, and made sure that they were aware that baking as a part of the food and ag sector or part of the critical infrastructure during any kind of natural and stated national emergency, which unfortunately we're in right now. But we've not done this alone. We have, through our partner organization, the Food Beverage Issue Alliance, and then a group that I help to facilitate, which is all the CEOs of the major food supply chain and beverage supply chain associations. We immediately got together and started putting together a game plan because we just knew that this was going to grow. Although, again, like I said, I don't think anybody knew how fast and how big, but we had to make sure that while everybody was focused on combating the virus, that Americans' families were nourished and fed during this outbreak, however long it lasts.
And has there been any surprises or some stories or interactions that you've had with members that have been interesting to you?
No, it's hard to know, Haley, where to start. There's so many inspirational stories, and I think you and Katie have done an amazing job of highlighting some of those stories. We hear about companies that are making sure that the organizations that they work with that feed folks, unfortunate folks who may be struggling, at food banks and other organizations that they support, they're making sure that even in the crush at retail to get product, that they're still supporting and providing product, to the food banks and other organizations like that. We've just been absolutely amazed by the way our industry has stepped up once again to really help those in need at a time of crisis. I think sometimes we and frankly the broader food industry are in the background, kind of out of sight, out of mind. And it's times like this when people really focus in on just the basic necessities and essentials, feeding their family and things like that. And so hearing the stories of, distributors in stores getting product, bakers coming to work every day, in some cases leaving their families at home, and going through, some of the work from home, shelter at home orders that are popping up all over the country, and putting themselves at risk to make sure that product gets made and it gets onto the store shelves, so that, again, our communities and our country have food on the table.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think that we've been trying to capture as many of those stories as possible to make sure that people know how the baking industry and the food industry has really come together during this time to really rise to the occasion.
No, and I think it's just ingrained, to use another industry pun. I think it's just ingrained in our culture. And we had a call with our executive committee 2 weeks ago, and we were all on the same page. We were all in agreement that everything else that we were doing, and unfortunately that included the ABA convention, everything else had to be put on the back burner. And our singular focus was keeping this industry operational so that we could feed our communities and feed our country. And again, story after story about how companies are recognizing, again, the fact that their employees are braving this storm, and are willing to, again, leave their families and come to work every day and produce great products, so that, again, America's families can be fed. One of the things I remember so succinctly when we had a speaker, Jose Andres, who many of you know is very involved in a lot of feeding programs. He spoke with us after the horrible hurricane situation in Puerto Rico with Hurricane Maria and the aftermath of that. And he said something that stuck with me ever since. He said, you put a piece of protein between two slices of bread, that will nourish people through life. That gives them 1,800 calories that they can get through the next day. And I think our members are the epitome of that. They're making sure that our communities can get through the next day.
And it seems, and I absolutely agree. And I think that through this crisis, people are remembering bread again. They're remembering baked goods. And I think that it is that, that comfort, that emotional connection and all of that. But I'm wondering, from your perspective and everything that you've been working on, what have you been learning so far about what's been going right? What could be done better in the future, either with working with government agencies, working with other food groups? What are some things that we're learning right now as we're going through this?
That's a great question, Katie. I will tell you that we are learning a lot. Most of it is good in the sense that we're able to rally as an entire food chain, and everybody is on board with that mission. We have all put aside our organizational egos, if you will, and we have all, we're sharing resources like I've never seen the food industry before. We're already a tight-knit group of folks, but with any set of folks in groups together, particularly a lot of A personalities like myself and my colleagues, other things tend to get in the way in normal times. Everybody has set all of that aside, and we are rallying together. We have subgroups of our various groups. So we have a group that's interacting with the CDC. We have a group that is putting together protocols that we're getting published on all of our respective websites in terms of how to handle specific situations in facilities. How do you safe distance inside a facility? How do you take care of employees to make sure they don't get sick? How do you, if an employee does get sick, how do you handle that situation in a humane way, but also keep the operation running? And, we're interfacing with the White House Task Force. I've been on probably 7 conference calls today alone, some with colleagues, some with government agencies. The system, just to be brutally honest, is far from perfect. Some of the calls today have been rather difficult and direct, with agencies trying to get them to understand the seriousness and the urgency of the situation that we face. And I think sometimes in times of crisis, people and organizations sort of default to their comfort zone. And unfortunately, with some government agencies, that comfort zone is to go through the regular order and the regular process. I think we saw that last week with Congress, frankly, and delaying getting the relief bill through the House. But I think the situations on the positive side so far outweigh some of these challenges that we've had. I cannot speak highly enough about Deputy FDA Commissioner Frank Giannis and his team. They have bent over backwards. He was one of the first calls that we made. How do we take burdens out of the way? What's in the regulatory pipeline, the enforcement pipeline, inspection pipeline? How do we just set that aside, knowing, and here's where being so close to our industry colleagues is important. You know, we all know what our companies do every single day to protect the food supply and food safety. And we have fallen back on that as our baseline. And in some areas, we've doubled down, particularly in the area of sanitation and things like that. And we've jumped into this breach, and it's amazing what we have been able to do because of the good manufacturing practices, the good practices that are in place across the food industry. And I think FDA in particular has a lot of confidence in us to do that. And so then they can focus on other things like, you know, finding PPE for medical providers as well as the food industry, hopefully finding cures or vaccine for the underlying virus. And we've told them, listen, we've got this. The food industry has this. We just need you to kind of remove some of the barriers. And for the most part, the agencies that we deal with have been very receptive to that. That being said, I can just tell you that we are taking notes, and we are, you know, making sure that we take lessons away from this, because there's been, frankly, in my opinion, a lot of obstacles, bureaucratic obstacles, that we will come back to once we get through this, and we will get through it. We'll take that back, you know, to our allies on Capitol Hill, to the different agencies that we work with, to the White House, and we will bring those learnings back and say, you know, we can't go through this again. You know, we know there'll be something else. Hopefully, it won't be as severe and as bad as this is, but we know there'll be something else on the horizon, and we want to make sure that we actually learn some lessons from this. And so we're taking very copious notes in terms of how do we streamline this process going forward.
And I think that'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out. I mean, you make it sound like you can just pick up the phone and talk to the FDA or Homeland Security or the White House. But there's a lot of groundwork that's been laid, you know, to kind of get us to this place where you can call Frank Giannis and you can get on a White House task force. How does that happen? It doesn't happen overnight.
You're absolutely right, Katie. Part of that is there are multiple steps to that. First and foremost, we have a reputation, a hard-earned but well-deserved reputation in Washington as being problem solvers. We come to the table, especially with organizations like FDA. They know that we're there to solve a problem. We're not there just to, you know, moan and groan about problems or issues that we have. We bring solutions to the table. And that really is, we have, as you know, we have a great team of professionals that are very well respected in this town, but it's also the members that lend their subject matter expertise. Through all of this, we have tapped into our members that have, you know, microbiologists or food safety experts, you know, all of these different skills that we've been able to bring to bear. The other piece of it, and I know it's sort of, you know, the dirty laundry of politics is the money side. The industry has supported our political resources very well, and what that means is it allows us to be more visible, you know, with policymakers here in town, but also with our industry colleagues. So we have a great visibility and a reputation for effectiveness in part because of the political resources that ABA has been able to bring to the table for the last 10 to 12 years. So that when we step in and we call, people go, okay, this is an organization that's very credible and well connected. And that combination is really, I think, the secret, not so secret, to our success.
So the groundwork has really been being laid over the course of many, many decades of this organization in DC. And I feel like I'm hogging the mic here, but I have, you and I, again, we've spent a lot of time talking from, the communications perspective and, talking out different ideas. And something you told me that stuck with me, I don't know when you told it to me, a week or two ago, is that you said this whole crisis has really brought to bear some ideas of things that were happening, but now they're going to happen just more quickly. Could you tell me a little bit more about what you meant by that?
No, that's great. And I understand, the days really do seem like they're blurring together. And it's really hard to believe that it's only been, 2.5 weeks since we've been really in the thick of this. And it looks like we're going to be in it for a while longer. But I think what I was referring to, Katie, was, a lot of things have been in motion. And I think in the industry, we have seen, and again, speaking for both baking and the broader food industry, we've just seen this acceleration of change, whether it's the customers in the marketplace, consumer trends, all of that. We've spent a lot of time, as an association, helping our members navigate through that change. I think the one area where it probably is lagging is, just to be brutally honest about it, is in our government infrastructure, our regulatory regimes, and schemes that we have. And again, we're dealing today is we've been trying to get 3 agencies to all get on the same page, because they're sending conflicting information. And so they're not adapting to that speed. So I think that's a piece of it. On the backside of this, and I think this is what I was really talking to you about, on the backside of this, I just see a lot of propellant coming out of this. There was a piece in one of the trade magazines just this morning, actually, that talked about the need, and this is something we've been talking to our members about, to do more direct-to-consumer connection, build out the brand reputation. And why is that important? Because I think on the back end of this, we're just seeing accelerated reliance, and maybe even by some reluctant consumers, on e-commerce, on some of the food service delivery options. I'll just sort of tell a story on myself. I've downloaded 3. I've been an Uber fan since the beginning. So I've got Uber Eats, but I downloaded 2 other, apps on my phone so that we can support the restaurants in our area and hopefully help them get through this tide. But I just think, if we're doing it, millions and millions of other people are doing it. And I think, look at what's going on in e-commerce. I think all of this is accelerant to the changes that were going on. But the other thing is, I don't claim to have a crystal ball. There are going to be changes in the marketplace, in the way we get to market, in terms of the way consumers, interact with food in ways that we can't even appreciate today. I really think we'll sit here 3 or 5 years from now and go, wow, didn't see that coming. And then maybe point back to this period in time as things that accelerated some of those changes.
Yeah. And kind of touching on something that you mentioned earlier, and that would be the workforce needs, because we've talked with you on this podcast about the baking industry and the workforce. And how would you say that this crisis has maybe accelerated or changed the needs around growing the baking industry's workforce?
Well, I think it was already, is like you said, Haley, you well noted that we've talked about this on the podcast and other venues before, the really strong need for skilled, competent workforce. I think when people's capacity, when bakers' capacity is going up by, 2 and in some cases 3-fold, it just creates far more additional demand on that, having that kind of skilled workforce in bakeries. So I think what's happening is, is I think there are companies that are out there that are trying to fill those needs in the middle of this crisis going on. One of the things that we're exploring is partnerships. And again, this is an industry that very much is in supporting their local communities. And, we're talking to different groups, particularly the restaurant group. I was talking with my counterpart at the National Restaurant Association, who told me they've got now 3 million people in their industry who have been laid off. And while the baking industry can't meet, and hire all those people as much as we might like to, but we can do our part to help those folks, get an income, maybe become part of the career path in the baking industry. So we're working on a partnership with the Restaurant Association where we can do outreach to those folks that unfortunately have been laid off and impacted during the coronavirus and do some outreach together to try to get them, sort of back into the workforce in the baking industry. As you know, we have been surveying our members to find out what is the need. And we're in the process of gathering that data in terms of both full-time positions, but also temporary positions. And again, I think it's an opportunity for us to help our current, workforce needs, but also help those folks that unfortunately have lost their livelihoods during the coronavirus.
Yeah, it sounds like at times like this, having those connections with other industries where we can really help each other out and make sure that, if the baking industry needs some extra help in their facilities and elsewhere has employees that are struggling because of the coronavirus, that, they can help each other and fill that need elsewhere. So
no, I agree, Haley. And I just spoke of the one example. I know that we are upping our efforts. We've had the partnership with the USO Pathfinders. Our team has done a fantastic job of doing, renewed outreach to those communities. And we're getting, I think some pretty good responses. And then we're also aware and trying to help other members connect with again, employees that unfortunately have lost their jobs and livelihood during the coronavirus pandemic in other industry areas, and try to bring those folks into the baking industry, and hopefully they find a lifelong fulfilling career in the baking industry. But at least maybe they come on for 3 or 4 months and sort of get stabilized until the situation turns. But again, I think it's part of how do we meet our increased needs during this time while also helping the folks in our local communities.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much today for joining us. I know that this will probably be one of several conversations we have with you during this crisis and as we work our way through it. So really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Bake to the Future is brought to you by the American Bakers Association in partnership with Human Factor. To hear upcoming and past episodes, go to baketothefuture.org. Bake to the Future is produced by Haley Blumenreich. Audio engineer is Blake Alton. And A Slice of the Action is written by the American Bakers Association's Government Relations team.